So I've watched my fair share of Toonami. I can't say I was a regular watcher, but I tuned in whenever I could. Whenever I wasn't trying to watch the big three, I found myself looking for whatever was airing because I had a young, impressionable mind. One of the anime I ended up finding was dimensionw, and I really enjoyed it at the time. But that was probably 5 or 6 years ago, so I don't remember much about it, besides it being 12 episodes long. I haven't mentioned this show to anyone because I feel like no one has ever heard of this show besides me. So that's why we're here today, to see if dimensionw is an underrated gem. But before we continue, you don't need to travel to another dimension to get good content. How about you subscribe here, and that will cover you in every dimension. And if you still want a taste of an alternate reality, check out the second channel where we do fun stuff over there too. Okay, that's it. Let's keep going. dimensionw aired in December of 2016. It was animated by Studio 3 Hertz. I've never heard of these guys before, and I'm not sure if the name is Hertz or HZ. dimensionw takes place in the future where they found another dimension outside of X, Y, and Z, smartly named dimensionw. This dimension has an endless energy supply, so people were able to tap into this power, basically rendering anything that isn't electronic obsolete. This is where our main character comes in. Kiyomo Mabuchi is basically a ninja deck collector, voiced by Chris Sabat, who you might recognize as Vegeta. I think this was a great casting because of how cool Mabuchi is. He's incredibly stoic and doesn't show too much emotion in the start, but I think his voice just fits perfectly. Honestly, this first episode was just overwhelmingly cool. There's this thing that the anime does when they just make the entire background a single color and then they add a white drop shadow and that kind of tails off. I don't know what this is for, or the different colors show different moods or emphasize different things, but damn, it looks cool. One thing that is not cool about this anime is the opening, and this is probably one of the worst openings I've seen in my life, and I'm not even trying to joke. This shit is terrible. Mabuchi starts dancing, and when I tell you I caught secondhand cringe from this, it even looks like he doesn't even want to be here. This is a skip. The ending luckily is pretty good, but there's a little bit of lore here I'd like to explain. So like I said, it used to air on Toonami, so there's a version of the ending that isn't in Japanese to accommodate for the channel's blocking. I honestly think it fits a bit more with the cool, suspenseful kind of vibe, with the official ending being more of a rock song, which I do like, but I think Toonami cooked with this one. Sorry for yapping, but let's talk about the actual anime now. The first episode starts with a collection call where Mabuchi meets the robot Mira, who's voiced by Jad Saxton. She voiced the Space Dandy girl. I made a video about Space Dandy, go watch it. Mabuchi realizes when he's knocked out by the robot girl, she took the illegal coils that he was looking for. Mira, trying to bring the illegal coils to her dad/creator, who is also the CEO of New Tesla Energy, the company that discovered dimensionw. Mira's dad sets off some sort of EMP which makes everything ran by coils kinda self-destruct, including Mira. She takes this opportunity to join forces with Mabuchi and become a collector. Episode 1 didn't feel too bloated, but episode 2 is where we get a ton of information, which I do think is a good and bad thing. The two collectors are trying to catch the infamous loser, a guy who broadcasts his heist but is secretly gathering number coils. At this point we don't know what the number coils do, but we also find out that there was a war and Mabuchi was a part of the elite task force. I feel like the anime should have established one of these ideas before introducing another. I would probably go with the number coils because that helps build the world a bit better by explaining different parts and how things work. But when we do get an explanation of the number coils, it's about a minute long. So why the fuck didn't you just explain it then?
How the fuck would you show me something if I couldn't have it?
That's another thing. I feel like this show will just do and expect you to follow along with it as if there's a ton of episodes. In episode 4 and 5, Mira and Mabuchi go to collect a coil from a guy that died. They also have to investigate the sequence of murders, presumably done by ghosts. They eventually find out that the killer was the owner of the hotel, but it's not his present self, it's his past self who used dimensionw to kill the current version of himself. Like, none of that shit makes sense, dude. And I get that sometimes you just have to wait and see with some anime, especially with this one, where there's a mystery theme kinda going on, but damn! I wish they established some more rules. Like, you're telling me you can interact with your past self physically and also interact with others just because of dimensionw? Like, it could be dimension Fortnite penis and it still just wouldn't feel connected to the stuff that we already seen coils do. In the end of episode 5, the ghosts just move on, and that left a very sour taste in my mouth because this little arc feels like a big chunk of the show. We get to episode 6, and guess who's here? Welcome back, Satoru Gojo.
Perhaps this will aid your comprehension, Losty. You are beautiful, but made more so because my words confine you.
This episode was more filler than anything, but at the end, the Prince of Africa declares war on Japan and its collectors. And Lord have mercy, I love black women. I love black women! I think that episode 7 has to be the best episode of the series because we see how Mabuchi became who he is. His girlfriend, who he met completely by accident, has a debilitating disease where she can only live up to the next 5 years. Mabuchi, being desperate, goes to Mira's mother, and he's told that if he joins an elite task force, there's a chance for his girlfriend to survive. I thought this was really cool to see, and the context behind why he hates cool so much makes so much sense. He just happened to get some of the worst luck imaginable, and is scared of what else could happen, naturally creating a distrust for the cools and Mira specifically. My only gripe with this episode, and probably the series as a whole, is how much content there is. Like I said, this flashback happens in episode 7. There are 12 episodes, and by this time the series is preparing for its climax. They kind of dump a ton of information about Mabuchi, Mira, and the African Prince, and it just feels so dense, you know? So I'm gonna try to summarize it as best I can. So a bunch of collectors are heading to Easter Island by request of the African Prince. On their way there, they get attacked by some sort of orb and fight a bunch of robots. You see Loser get the Mabuchi, and so does the orb, so he ends up touching it. Apparently this orb was the terrorist Seameyer who wanted to cultivate dimensionw. Then we find out dimensionw is able to see memories, and one of the memories is the little boy Lawai dying. I didn't mention the real African Prince Lawai because he isn't in full control of Africa yet. His older brother is, so I just been calling the older brother the African Prince. Sorry if it's a little confusing. So Lawai is now a robot, and speaking of robots, Mira's mom was making a robot body, in order to transplant Mabuchi's wife into that robot body, but yeah, they have the same exact measurements, like down to the lines in their palms. So there's that. The last couple episodes is about the race to the Genesis coil and the key. At this point of the show, it feels like it's just dumping more info on you, and it makes sense, don't get me wrong, but it just feels like there's so many things that needed to happen to get to this point. But there isn't nearly enough time to explain all of it. Like, this series, if it was double the length, I think would have allowed some things to breathe. But I feel like since everything is focused on you getting to the end of the series, it just feels so dense, like I said. And speaking of the end, the anime wraps up by putting together Mabuchi's shattered memories. We found out that the Genesis coil was destroyed before they even got to the island, and that was able to drive Seameyer crazy, and they took him back to dimensionw. The ending would make a lot more sense if you just watched it, because the last 3 episodes are just, well, I remember this, and this happened with them, and now I remember what happened in the war of the penis coils, and dimensionw has endless power! And honestly, it's just a bit much, but it all comes together in the end in a pretty satisfying way. But if you're wondering what happens to Mabuchi and Mira after, well, look no further to the OVA where they take baths. One thing I have not mentioned at all in this video is the fan service. Like, Mira has the mannerisms and the look of a teenage girl, but she is constantly showing some skin. Put some damn clothes on. A couple things I would change in the show is how much it leans into the sci-fi. I feel like in the beginning it's a bit more realistic, and yeah, I'm using that word a bit loosely, but coils are supposed to be like this new form of energy, something that isn't fully understood. So when we find out that most of the coils are able to access memories and materialize the past, it leans into more whimsical territory. Like, we go from a buddy cop type of gig to finding out what happened to the ultimate source of power. And it's not bad. I wish we got more of Mabuchi and Mira just looking for coils and getting some low stake bounties. That's honestly what grabbed me in the first place. I thought I was gonna get a futuristic Batman kind of thing, but instead we got something a bit more ambitious. I really enjoyed Dimension W. The studio went a bit crazy for a 12 episode show. I'm not saying it was the greatest animation I've seen in my life, but it was really impressive. They also had a lot of recognizable voice actors too. This was just a neat little package that deserves a lot of love. I'm not sure where the manga leaves off, but I don't think there's much room for a second season. But if we were to get one, you can definitely count me in. But back to the question, is this an underrated classic? Yes. Put some damn clothes in that robot, yo.